Welcome in to the Rockies Insider. I am your Rockies Insider, Patrick Lyons. Plenty to get to today, a mostly NL West edition of the Rockies Insider. Let's figure out what the rest of the division is doing around those Colorado Rockies. And we have got some news, stadium news, not about the Tampa Bay Rays, but about the Athletics. Not the Oakland Athletics. They're just the Athletics or the A's this year as they play in West Sacramento at the home of the AAA Sacramento River Cats. But let's start in the NL West, not with a baseball story, but with another unfortunate tale of betrayal for Mr. Shohei Ohtani. For those who need to be caught up just a little bit, his interpreter and confidant, Ippei Mizuhara, taking upwards of $17 million from Shohei Ohtani unknowingly from Ohtani and using it to gamble. And it was really messy there right after that second game of the Korea series in Seoul, in which Ippei addresses the team there in South Korea that, yeah, I'm going to be stepping away for a little while. I've been doing a couple things, all of which Ohtani had no idea what was actually going on behind the scenes. So the story has already taken another turn in terms of Mizuhara in general. He does have a court date scheduled for January, dealing with this sentencing, as he has pled guilty back in June for bank and tax fraud after stealing millions from Ohtani. So January 24th is when the sentencing has been delayed until. It's had a couple pushbacks. But the latest story coming from The Athletic is Shohei Ohtani petitioning a federal judge last week for ownership of about $325,000 worth of baseball cards that Mizuhara fraudulently purchased. All of that money that was taken by Mizuhara from Ohtani, some of that money was used to purchase Shohei Ohtani baseball cards. Probably one of the few things that was a good investment by Mizuhara. And so since that is how Mizuhara came to own these baseball cards, Ohtani has petitioned to gain ownership over these cards. Ohtani was actually granted a hearing that's scheduled for December 20th in order to plead his case to get these cards back that Mizuhara received somewhere between January and March earlier this year on sites like eBay and whatnot. If you haven't checked out whatnot, it's interesting to say the least. I'll be talking a little bit more about not just eBay, but whatnot and baseball cards this evening with the homies over at the Blake Street Banter on Tuesday night. Grant Hankins, the greatest collection of Charlie Blackmon cards ever assembled. Yes, yeah, you might want to make sure that you listen to that. But a site like whatnot, boy, it can really tap into certain addictive behaviors and folks who have a certain predilection to become addicts of something new, of collecting, of getting it all, of getting obsessed over something. And whatnot does a really good job of tapping into that. Plenty of folks are able to participate on sites like eBay and whatnot, and not get overly invested in whatever it is that they are invested in. They know where their limits are, but whatnot is certainly a site that, for somebody with a gambling addiction like Ippei Mizuhara, I very much can see why whatnot would have been a site in which Mizuhara would have spent that $325,000, which when you think about it, isn't a ton of money. Here's why, because you're probably curious, well, Ohtani's baseball cards, how much could they possibly worth? If you stepped away from the hobby from when you were younger, or maybe in your teens in high school, maybe you did in your 20s, maybe 30s, maybe you started a family and you totally stepped away from the hobby of baseball card collecting. During the pandemic, it received a major resurgence. People had nothing to do but kill time, really, in many ways, right? There wasn't a ton going on, so they dug up their old collections. They were going online, they were trading, they were trying to amass new collections, buying new cards, participating in things called box breaks, where you're not even opening up the cards yourself. Somebody else is opening up those cards, and you're just getting whatever comes in those packs. So you might just get a particular team that you're looking for, and maybe you're not even a fan of that team. Maybe you just want a Paul Skeens autograph card. So you get a bunch of Pirates cards that you don't even want, and you're chasing a certain high. You're chasing a certain card. So the boom started back up in 2020, and it's continued to ride really high. Now, you may have recalled recently Shohei Ohtani's 50-50 baseball, the one that gave him 50 home runs in his remarkable 10 RBI game down in Miami. That sold for $4 million. Yes, $4 million. And you would think that perhaps some of his baseball cards couldn't be anywhere close to that. But because of that sale, because of the relationship between memorabilia and baseball cards, Ohtani's most valued cards right now his number one would probably be about $1 million. It's a 1-of-1 Bowman Chrome Superfractor that is autographed. It's the rarest of them all. Came out in 2018 before he had even stepped foot on a Major League Baseball diamond, right as he was joining the Los Angeles Angels. I think in this one, you can definitely tell there's some Photoshop because of the way the cap fits on his head. And you can tell that it was very clearly not taken in spring training or taken at a press conference. It's a different style of cap than the New Era one that's worn in MLB. But that is the rarest card of all, 1-of-1. And though the highest sale for an Ohtani card is $336,000 earlier this year in September, if that 1-of-1 2018 Bowman Chrome Superfractor autograph card were to ever be put on the market, certainly would have to think that it would be going for about $1 million. Now, that sale in September this year of a 2018 Topps Chrome Sapphire Superfractor autograph, that sold for $336,000. What's wild about that is that exact same card was sold in May of 2019 for $4,800. So yes, in a little more than 5 years, that single card has gone up in value 7,000%. It's worth 70 times the value in May of 2019. Ohtani has done a lot since then, of course. In May of 2019, he was still just a what if, and he still hadn't done what we've now seen him do. You're also probably thinking Bowman Chrome Superfractor, Topps Chrome Sapphire Superfractor. These are very wordy names for baseball cards. They are. That is certainly one of the trickier issues, I think, with baseball card collecting is you got to spend a lot of money to have a great collection. You got to spend a lot of money to have cards that are worth a lot of money. Now, not everybody collects in that way. I collect baseball cards, but I just like to rip open packs with my dad, open up a box of cards. And as much as I said to myself this year, man, the 2024 Topps set, it looks great. Love it. I want to try to get the whole set. And yet I haven't put in enough time to sort all my cards, put them in numerical order, and then figure out which ones I need. But that's the hobby, I think, to a lot of people. And it's all right if you don't have these Superfractor cards, these autograph cards, game-worn memorabilia, even MLB patch cards, which is brand new. It's brand new. It can get really pricey. It can get really expensive. And I think has scared off a lot of people in the past. And I would say don't be scared off if you're looking to get into the hobby. Definitely do that. Start off simple. Try to get some of the cheapest packs. Try to get a set. That's what you should try to chase. Chase the cards that are maybe $1 that you need to complete your set. And now you feel good about that because you're almost never going to be done completing something. You're never going to be done collecting. But at least if you have a reasonable endpoint, like, yes, I got 1 through 750, you're going to be able to say, okay, I've reached a stopping point and I'm good. I don't need to maybe invest that much more. Now, I find it curious too. So the thumbnail for this video, so if you're listening to the podcast, thank you. Make sure you're going over onto the YouTube side. There's tons of YouTube shorts and videos that you can watch that are different than these live shows that I do. But if you go over there, you'll notice that on the thumbnail for this video, for this podcast, has a card. It's a dual signature card of Shohei Ohtani and Babe Ruth. Now, obviously, Babe Ruth did not sign this card. This was an autograph of Babe Ruth that was cut to fit onto the card. That's something that's very common in the industry. I think there's even a way that you could lift a signature. I don't know if that's viewed as being somewhat taboo. I've seen it online where it's almost like basically you get a piece of tape and you carefully rub it over the signature. You pull it up and then you can transfer it onto something else. That's a little bit weird, but this is a piece of paper that has Babe Ruth's signature on it, and it fits in underneath very nicely to a Shohei Ohtani autograph. It looks great. That card was sold in January for $113,000. It's a 2023 card that sold for over $100,000. So yeah, you or I will never be able to afford a card like that. Maybe one day we might be able to hold it in our hand, but even then, that could be a stretch. So those cards that Mizuhara bought and that Ohtani is trying to get back for $325,000, they must not be all that special. Again, $300,000 worth of cards is still special to you and I, but those cards that he collected, maybe they were only worth tens of thousands, but none of them, I'm guessing are super rare. Maybe there's one that's in the $100,000 range. That sort of remains to be seen. And again, baseball cards is plural. So maybe there's only 2 cards that he is trying to get back. And maybe one of them is this Ohtani Babe Ruth dual signature card for 2023. Baseball cards doesn't mean a whole box of cards or whole case, although it was in one of the Panoply cases. So, there's not a ton of those cards in there. So I'm thinking they might be more tens of thousands rather than hundreds of thousands of cards. Regardless, the baseball card hobby and the baseball card industry is still in the midst of a very big boom. As I mentioned, MLB patch debut cards. This was something that started in 2023 when Fanatics took over Topps and took over the uniforms for Major League Baseball. The idea they had was pretty ingenious. Players, before they debuted, would have a patch on their sleeve that said MLB debut. And once they got into the game, after they got back into the clubhouse, one of the clubbies would take that patch off, send it back into Topps. They would make a card out of it, and the player would sign it. And it would be a one-of-one autographed MLB debut patch card. I talked about this not too long ago. Paul Skeens, his card is out there. And the Pirates have said, if you get this card, we will give you a lot for it. An absolute haul. Well, there are Rockies guys who've debuted. There was a card last week or two on eBay, Connor Kaiser. You might remember, played 3 games, all in Cincinnati when Ezekiel Tovar was on his paternal leave for the birth of his first child. And Kaiser got into those games, and that card, that patch, autograph, was on eBay for a buy it now or best offer price of $2,000. It has since disappeared, but a Hunter Goodman debut patch card, autographed, has since sold for $1,900. So big money, but it is a one-of-one card for Hunter Goodman. So that's a pretty neat piece of memorabilia, to say the least. Sticking with the Dodgers, I talked on Monday's show about Tommy Edman's deal, that deferred money. A lot of money is deferred for the Dodgers going forward. Justin Turner even has some deferred money going. Again, the Dodgers are already paying those players. It's just money going into escrow. It's going into a bank account. And then when it comes out, it's magically more money that the players get. So in many ways, the Dodgers have already paid down those deals. They are not paying Ohtani $700 million. Ohtani is receiving $700 million. The Dodgers are paying Ohtani $460 million. And because of deferred money, again, it becomes $700 million with inflation. Nolan Arenado to the Los Angeles Dodgers. This was another topic of discussion on Monday and Tuesday's show. Cardinals are reportedly putting Arenado on the trade market, and there's two frontrunners right now, Yankees, Dodgers. Arenado on his Instagram page posted a bunch of pictures of him in and around LA, which, look, he's from that area, but in and around LA with a Kendrick Lamar song that said Dodger Blue from his most recent album. Is that a hint that that is where he wants to go? Well, here's the thing about it, because there is a major domino still out there in Major League Baseball, and its name is Juan Soto. If Juan Soto ends up signing with the Mets, how do the Yankees respond? If Soto goes to the Mets, how do the Yankees respond? And how much money do the Yankees now have to play with? Who else can they get for the price of one young superstar corner outfielder? They can add Arenado, who will probably require the Cardinals to kick in a little bit of money on top of what the Rockies are already paying down from Arenado's contract, $5 million over the next 2 years. But the Yankees can afford to bring in Arenado. They'll probably bring in Pete Alonso to play first base. You can sign Corbin Burnes and Anthony Santander from the Orioles. You could bring in all of those guys if you don't get Juan Soto. Possible. Very possible. So again, when it comes to money, the Padres are in a similar situation with trying to figure out how to navigate the luxury tax threshold and pay their guys while also not going too crazy. They already got a couple $300 million contracts on the books. And with 1 year remaining on his deal, Luis Arraez has become a player that the Padres have considered floating out there in some trade conversations. AJ Preller, general manager of the Padres, he did really well to turn Juan Soto into a lot. He got a lot that ended up helping the club. In fact, you could probably argue that if Juan Soto had stayed on the Padres in 2024, they would have made the postseason. You could make that case with all of the players that the Padres were able to bring in after dealing Soto. Michael King, directly from the Yankees. Kyle Higashioka, critical for the Padres behind the plate all postseason long. And then some of the prospects that they got from the Yankees, Drew Thorpe, ended up going to the White Sox for them to bring in Dylan Cease. So they got three major contributors for one. They possibly could do the same thing again with Luis Arraez. He's set to make just under $15 million in his final year of arbitration. So could the Padres get similar production from him offensively, and maybe more importantly, and certainly a lot more easily, defensively? Yeah, could they get that kind of production from Anthony Rizzo, who started his career in San Diego back in 2011 before he was traded to the Cubs? Don't forget that. Maybe a Ty France, Josh Bell, who's already spent a little bit of time in San Diego. Yeah, that would cost a fraction of that $15 million you're spending on Arraez to keep him on the roster. And you're bringing in some prospects too. That capital could also help you on the 26-man roster, or those are even more trade chips to bolster your squad. We know Arraez has 3 consecutive batting titles in his 6 seasons in the majors. Think about this. How many home runs do you think Luis Arraez has hit? A big leaguer who's won 3 batting titles, who's been traded twice, very valuable player, right? He's coveted. He's going to make $15 million in arbitration this year. How many home runs has he hit in his 6 years in the majors with Minnesota, Miami, and San Diego? How many? 28. That's it. Arraez doesn't have a position, really. He's below average defensively at first base. He's not giving you that thump for a lot of first basemen. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but I can see the Padres swinging a deal. They did it last year with Juan Soto, and they were fine. I think they were better off because of it. So Padres fans, I don't think are going to be in an uproar if they end up dealing Arraez, who they just got last May. He hasn't even spent a year in the brown and yellow, in the spicy and golden mustard. Hasn't even been a year. I just don't know if the Padres can sustain this level of payroll. I don't know. In 2026, they're going to be paying 6 players $120 million. Think about that. 6 players, $120 million. Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Jake Cronenworth, and Fernando Tatis Jr. Only Tatis Jr. would be under his age 32 season. So they're old. They're getting up there. Darvish, you're okay about. Musgrove, I think, to a degree. Machado, obviously, he's aged really well, but still, it's a lot of money for 6 guys. Arizona Diamondbacks, they seem to be in on everybody in terms of trades. They seem to be in on absolutely everybody. One of the areas they may look to add via trade is closer. Paul Sewald's gone. Right now, they got 23-year-old Justin Martinez with 9 career saves as their closer penciled in right now. How is Torey Lovullo going to get the ball to the 9th inning? He's got to bolster that bullpen. You've got to improve that. Jesse Friedman of PHNX Diamondbacks, good friend, great guest. Great friend, great guest, excuse me. He actually found 10 names that would fit for Arizona. You can check that out over at Go PHNX. Number 1 on that list, Ryan Helsley. That makes sense. He's only got a year left with the Cardinals, who are in the midst of a rebuild. Doesn't make sense because Diamondbacks don't really operate that way. They don't sign play. They don't try to acquire players via trade who only have a year left. You want to get a little bit more than that. A lot of the small market teams, they need more than just 1 year. Think back to the Jeff Bridich years. You know, the ones before the club had lost 100 games in back-to-back seasons. And before Bridich disenfranchised his star third baseman. But the Rockies went to multiple postseasons in 2017 and 2018. And at the 2018 deadline, Bridich acquired only 1 reliever, but it was one that had club control through the next season, through 2019. Sungwon Oh from the Toronto Blue Jays. So it wasn't a pure rental in that way. That's Arizona's MO. Pete Fairbanks, he's got multiple years remaining. He's rumored to be on the market for Tampa Bay. Fairbanks was also the one, if you remember, at the beginning of the season when Ryan McMahon hit that walk-off grand slam during the home opener. Fairbanks was on the mound, and he was the one questioning the humidor after that moment. Diamondbacks also could be in on Blake Trinan. I could see him closing again. He did for a period of time, I think when he first came over to the Dodgers. I think he had some experience when he was with Oakland. But I could see Trinan fitting in that closer role. Kenley Jansen, all-timer, we know. Kirby Yates. Is he a little too rich for their blood? You heard me say this earlier this week. Yates is definitely too rich for the Rockies' blood. So tons of options for them. Giants right now, San Francisco Giants, they've got one option that they're looking at starting pitcher, and reportedly it's been Corbin Burnes. Now, Burnes, he did reject his qualifying offer, so any team that signs him will have to give up a draft pick. They're going to lose some of their international bonus pool money. And you've got all of the American League East in on Corbin Burnes right now. You've got everybody except one team, Tampa Bay. He's too much out of their price range. But Baltimore naturally would love to bring him back. Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays are the other top suitors for Corbin Burnes. Important to note, Burnes is a California guy. He's from Bakersfield, California, which is actually much closer to Los Angeles than it is San Francisco. But Bakersfield did have a California League team for a period of time, the Bakersfield Blaze. They were a Giants affiliate. Maybe more importantly, Burnes did go to college at St. Mary's College of California in Moraga, California, which is about 35, 40 minutes or so east of San Francisco. Now, Burnes is projected to make about $200 million over about 7 years. So a little bit more overall than Blake Snell. A couple more years. Burnes is nearly 2 years younger. So I think that does make sense. San Francisco has already lost Snell to the Dodgers. So replacing him, I think, has a lot of value to the Giants. But keep in mind, Buster Posey, does he want to start his regime off by signing a guy like Burnes and losing $1 million in international signing bonus money? If they're going to be in on Roki Sasaki, they're going to need that extra $1 million. Do they want to give up their second and fifth highest picks in the 2025 draft? They already lost their second and third round picks last year when they signed Blake Snell and Matt Chapman. Is that how Buster Posey is going to begin his turn at the top of the Giants organization? That I just don't know. And finally, in pseudo Bay Area news, or former Bay Area news, the Oakland Athletics, formerly the baseball team formerly known as the Oakland Athletics. How many times is that going to be said this year? The baseball team formerly known as the Oakland Athletics, and now just known as the Athletics, will meet on Thursday with the Las Vegas Stadium Authority Board. They've got some key agreements that they need to decide upon at this meeting. That's going to cover not just the ballpark's construction, but the length of the first lease. Initially, probably set it for 30 years. That's commonplace. What happens if the A's decide that they want to leave before the 30 years were up? They got to figure all that out. But if all is good here, they can actually get the project started on that new ballpark that originally was slated to be about $1.5 billion with a B, $1.5 billion. Now the estimated cost is probably going to be $1.75 billion. So it only went up 0.25 B. That's it. 0.25 B. That's all we're talking about. It's a decimal. It's a fraction, right? 0.25 B. $250 million. That's crazy. It's expected to open on opening day in 2028. Thank you for sticking around. Make sure you're going over to @PatrickDLyons, @PatrickDLyons MLB, Rockies Insider, you name it, the YouTube channel, the podcast. Appreciate it. Keep your eyes peeled for that Rockies Insider newsletter, which I'm really excited to start bringing to you guys each and every week. Appreciate you coming by. Appreciate that momentum. But as I like to say, momentum, it's only as good as your next show. So I'll talk to you then.